Hello and welcome to the Sensibly Speaking podcast. This is Chris Shelton, the critical thinker at large, coming at you for show number 123. And this show, of course, is brought to you on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, as well as with video here on YouTube. All right, so this week I have probably one of the most interesting guests I think I've ever had on my show. I've been looking forward to this interview for a very long time. I have, as anybody who has watched my channel for any length of time knows, I have interviewed a number of people who were previously involved in destructive cults or high control groups or, however you want to describe the situations that they were involved in, where they were followers of a leader of some kind, whether that leader was Joseph Smith or whether it was Bill Gothard or L. Ron Hubbard or whoever. And I have talked at length about the abusive relationship that is a destructive cult, whether it's a small group or large group or whatever. And we've talked about the dynamics of this and how people get involved in it and why smart people fall for stupid things. But this week, we're going to be talking to Jessica Schab, and she was herself a spiritual leader, not follower. And she actually, and we were going to find out exactly how this happened, because I'm a little curious myself. I have not done a lot of pre-interview with Jessica on this. We're just kind of diving right into it. But she kind of realized somehow that what she was doing as a spiritual new age guru or leader was itself, the analogy she made was, imagine one day waking up and finding out that you're a drug dealer. And then suddenly maybe thinking, gee, maybe this isn't such a good idea. Right? And maybe what I've been doing isn't really the smartest thing to do, and maybe it's not in the best interest of the people who are following me to continue giving them this message. And she changed, and she is now an advocate for critical thinking and skepticism and reason. And so I, like I said, have been wanting to talk to her for a while. So, Jessica, welcome to my show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being on. Okay, so let's just dive right into this. So first off, you're obviously not some old, wizened, spiritually enlightened Indian guru who sat on a mountain for 70 years and then came down to tell us all about it. You're a young woman and you are European, is that right?
I'm from Canada.
Oh, Canada.
Actually, originally.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm living in Europe.
There we go. Okay, yeah, because you're in Portugal now.
Yeah, and my background is Polish and Swedish, so.
Got it. All right, so let's just get into this. How did you become a spiritual guru? How big was your following at its peak? How did this whole thing happen for you?
Okay, so first I started off, I was raised in a sort of a cult, actually. It was a combination between Christianity, Jewish, and Jehovah's Witness.
Wow.
And yeah, it was called the Worldwide Church of God at the time. And it was still so strange because we went to church on a Saturday instead of a Sunday. We went to church at a high school in the theater area because it didn't have its own, and we weren't allowed to eat seafood or things like this, and it was strict. You weren't allowed to talk to people unless they were within the church and stuff like this. So
you could not talk to outsiders?
Well, it was frowned upon, and so it was quite controlling in that way. So but at the same time it created this idea of morals, that you're a good person, and so you get rewarded if you're able to do well with the Bible studies, right? And punished if you don't do well, or if you make some kind of ruckus in church.
Right.
So it was like this, and then one day my dad decided to leave the church, and it was for quite a strange reason. Actually, he started to hear voices. It's some sort of beings, angels, saying, what are you doing here? They're just saying the same thing. You should just leave. And he did, and basically we lost our friends and everything overnight. It's just like, only if you believe what I believe do we like you. It was very shocking to see how fickle these people were. And I was quite upset about this because I wanted some sort of fellowship. And so I was looking at other churches, and they didn't feel right. And so I started to look at other faiths, and just tried to study them all, of course, in a very superficial, rudimentary, oh, they're all saying, love. And so it's all the same thing. So why choose, kind of a thing.
How old were you at this time when your dad said, okay, we're out, and the whole disconnection happened?
About 14.
Okay.
Yeah, age 14.
Okay, so you were an inquisitive child, 14. You didn't just dive out. You looked for something else to dive into.
Well, because those were all my friends, and also my family was poor and they were struggling, and so I knew that the community can help you with this. So I needed another community for my family, namely. I was very protective of my family. I was very much feeling like I had to help, I had to save them, and this is very much a theme for later on. It just expanded from family to world. So the next thing that happened when I was 16, my sister died in a car accident, and I was quite judgmental. I was really sad to find out what an amazing person she was, and I really didn't get to know her because she liked to drink and party. And I had this conditioning that these kind of people are bad and you should stay away from them. And so hearing about what kind of person she was at the funeral was like devastating to miss out on this. But also, shortly after she died, very quickly after, my dad ended up having a stroke. And I think he actually had some sort of stroke before, maybe like a transient stroke, why he was claiming to speak to suddenly angels or things like this. So then he started to say he was speaking to my sister and she wasn't really dead. Then he was also speaking to aliens and they were our soul family, and that my sister died so that there could be a bridge between the work that our family has to do. And this kind of bizarre things. And I think he was just trying to help in the way that he thought was comforting. Then he started to talk to me about my mission, and he said that these beings that are talking with him want to talk with me, and that I have very important work to do, and that I'm special, and that I'm chosen. In the spiritual movement, they have the crystal child, the indigo child, a lot of pressure on their children that they're to be conscious or to change the world for the big shift. So suddenly I had this kind of pressure, and I didn't have much confidence at the time. I was actually quite a shy kid. And I was quite upset with my dad for talking about these things because first of all, I wanted a normal life and a normal dad. And also I needed him to be able to work and help support the family, not talk to these beings and have all these whimsy ideas. So actually I was very much a skeptic and adamant about this in the beginning.
Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. So first you're like, yeah, no way. I don't want to hear about this. This is nuts.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I really fought it. And I just really didn't like it. It just seemed like, you're out to lunch, this is not what I need right now. But as you know, in time, even if a person goes to church, for example, and they're not a believer and they just keep going, and then maybe they think, I'm going to pretend that I'm one of them. And then after a while, it starts to, sink in more and more. This happens a lot with actors too. They play a role. After a while, it's very difficult to shake the role. And so that's what happened. More and more it started to sink in that our thoughts create reality. We have to watch our words. We have to watch, because all of this turns into what we manifest and create for ourselves. So on Christmas Day, I was very angry with my father, and I said to him something really horrible. I said, I hate you. Why don't you just die already? And shortly after, he did.
Oh, I am so sorry.
It was absolutely devastating. Really devastated the family, my mother as well, because she was very, very close with him. He was the love of her life. And because I had these beliefs that my thoughts create reality, and I'm this powerful being that killed my dad.
Oh, wow.
And when he died, I realized how much I really care for him and what was he really doing that was so bad? He was trying to help me. He was trying to give me some purpose. So the only way I felt I could be close to him and make it up to him was to be able to take on his mission, take on his message so he didn't, die in vain, and that maybe there are other people who are getting similar messages. So they won't feel so alone, or they don't have to feel that they're going crazy. I remember also there were people, before my dad passed away, there was people that were coming to me with information similar to what my dad was saying. I was getting books, I was getting videos, and things like this. So I knew that there were others out there, but it seemed also, it was very much along the lines of conspiracy stuff. So I don't know if you're familiar with David Icke and the reptilians. So I was getting information about this.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with that. I've actually made a few videos about how the nonsense of conspiracy theories. Yeah. So you were wrapped up in the whole world of this stuff.
Yes, and it seemed like we're pretty much screwed. And so I hated this. And like, if we believe this, then we're going to manifest this as well, right?
Yep.
So I just started to be like, well, it doesn't seem to be any examples, anybody talking about what we can do. It's just always the problem and fear and fear and fear. So in my way to be close to my dad and continue on with his work and also help prevent what happened to me, not happen to other people, I started to make videos. I started to had all this, suddenly these messages of what my dad was talking to me about just came through very strongly, and I just, just took over. And right
now,
away,
how old were you at this point?
So I was 21.
Okay.
When my dad died.
Okay.
So 16 when my sister died, 21 when my dad died. And You see, so a lot of trauma brings us to the beliefs if you're not raised in it.
Yes.
So this is something that when we're really struggling with reality and we don't like it, we want to escape it, this is when these beliefs become very appealing. This is where we start to become gullible and vulnerable and easy to be taken advantage of.
That's right.
So I just started making videos.
Wow. See, it's interesting because your journey is not so different from that of a follower.
Right.
Right. In terms of the milestones of life being, moments of great change or upheaval or loss, and how those moments make us, like you just said, very vulnerable. And you just started making videos. Interesting. Okay. So then what happened?
So with my father dying, I felt like I had these kind of beings as well now speaking to me. I don't know if this was like placebo or osmosis or whatever kind of idea I convinced myself of. I never actually heard voices, but I just felt like I had stuff downloaded to me. So what I got regarding my dad's death was that I had a contract with him that I would help him pass away, like when the time came, because it would be too difficult for him. So even though I said this harsh thing, on the soul level, it was something like, it's okay, Dad, you can go now, we'll be fine. And it is just kind of stories we tell ourselves to be able to manage reality again. And so I shared this honestly to the world, what I said. And I think people were really inspired by that, or just this kind of honesty or bluntness that I had. Because most people wouldn't want to talk about that or share that they said something like this. I had tremendous amount of guilt, and that was the only way I could, deal with it, was kind of use YouTube at the time as my confession booth to the world. And many people really felt very connected to it, and people were very drawn to what I was saying, and people were trying to convince me that I actually really was, what my dad was saying I was. And then people were expecting me to heal them, and I thought, well, I'll just try, and they're suddenly better. So, wow, you really do have abilities too. It's placebo. If people believe in you or see there's something special in you, it's really scary how quickly
I have no doubt about that. But and the power of that is frankly amazing. What people can experience through, because they simply want to or believe that they are, better or stronger or whatever. I find it an endlessly fascinating subject, the placebo effect and the nocebo and how that whole thing works. So, but I'm interrupting you. Carry on.
That's okay. No, it's of course it's a quick fix, so it's a temporary fix. And I mean, when a person thinks they're healed by you, of course it's harder for you to question if what you're doing is actually right, is actually helping, because it looks to be helping. Everybody's telling you you're helping.
Right.
I just kept getting more and more support and approval, and we were still very tight financially at the time, and my mother was quite sick with migraines, and I just didn't like this idea of charging money for what I did because people wanted me to have them pay me for my healing services. And
now, were they coming to you in person yet at this point, or was it just
in person? Yes.
Okay.
And also, because wherever I went, people, I couldn't help but talk about these things and talk about what people are saying I can do. Oh, let me try. Oh, wow, you really, so like this, and virtually as well too. So
okay. So you're now being positioned as a spiritual healer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so people are wanting me to charge, but I don't want to charge because, I'm frustrated with all the times nobody would help my mother because we didn't have any money. I didn't like this idea that we're sending out to the universe. Only if you're wealthy do you deserve to be healthy. So I tried to resist this, but people insisted I put up a PayPal button. And so next thing I know, they're saying, can you do sessions with me? So they were donating to me. And another video I did, someone was like, I really feel like you need to come to Australia. I'll pay for everything, just come to this Nexus conference, which is a spiritual conference. And it was the first time I was really immersed by people who were all thinking about these things. Because at this time, it wasn't very mainstream like it is now. No sooner do I get out, it's like spreading like wildfire. It's everywhere.
Really?
Yeah, and before it was quite underground and taboo, and there was always this nervousness to talk about reptilians and the conspiracies and what's going on.
Oh, God, really? I was hoping that
yeah.
stuff was kind of going away. It's getting stronger?
Unfortunately, yes.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's horrible. Okay, yeah, because there's a whole thing over here in the States about flat earthers. And
yep.
And for the longest time, I was like, you got to be kidding me. The flat earthers are like the lowest hanging fruit in the critical thinking world. I mean, you want to take somebody down, go take down a flat earther. It's the easiest thing in the world to do, right? I mean, come on. And I was just like, yeah, no way am I touching that. And I had guys writing me and emailing me and you have got to do this. It's growing. It's becoming worse. And I'm like, no way. You're crazy. And I looked into it, and I'm like, oh, my God, there's more and more of these flat Earth videos popping up. And
millions. Very well done.
Yeah, and I went down to Fort Collins here in Colorado. I went to a flat earther meeting of real people who really believe this stuff. And it wasn't anywhere near as large as I, had been led to believe it was going to be. There were only about 10 people in the room. But they were hardcore believers, and I just sat and watched and listened, and I didn't interfere, and I didn't get into trying to make them wrong or argue with them. I just wanted to see how did they talk to each other? What did they say? And kind of figured the whole thing out, and I made a video or two about it. And I'm, that's about all I'm going to do with flat earthers because it's just so ridiculous. It's insane. But the idea that that's growing and the David Icke stuff is growing. I mean, Alex Jones is a problem here in the States, but most people look at it and just go, come on, that guy is nuts. And I had my own time of believing Alex Jones back when I was in Scientology. But that's, so your experience is that this is a blossoming thing.
Definitely. Oh, absolutely. Because also when I was doing this, because there wasn't very many, and I was becoming very overwhelmed with all these healing demands and pulled here to do this and that, I just at some point what I started to do, and I encourage others to do, is when I would do readings for people, is just to let them know that they were similar, that they could do the same thing, and that this was their soul work to spread this message, to plant the seeds, to help wake people up. So that's what they're all doing now. And so this is why it's spreading. I mean, we have Deepak Chopra, we have Eckhart Tolle, we have Oprah. This kind of stuff is entering psychology. Just be positive. Be careful with your thoughts. So you can see it there, and it's quite disturbing. And of course, there's the health movement, which yoga and meditation. There's nothing wrong with it. It can be very helpful, or even being a vegetarian. But people become so extreme, and the problem is it becomes a gateway. So if you go to a meditation or a yoga center, you will find flyers and people there that are advertising for chakra activation, connect with your higher self, and being a vegetarian isn't enough. No, you have to raise your vibration. You have to be conscious, and so that means you have to be a vegan, you have to be a raw foodist, you have to have a 100-mile diet, then you have to be a breatharian. So it gets so extreme, and everything is this idea of conscious, even just the conscious time to poo, 7 a.m. That's you. So any other time you're not conscious. It's just, it becomes very militant and like a religion, and it's too much. And then you're pushing it on your kid. You're expecting your kids to have a cleanse all the time and to meditate, and so this isn't good. This isn't healthy.
No.
But with the flat earthers, I mean, there's millions and millions of followers and hits on YouTube about it. I do think it was maybe some kind of an experiment, because I remember at one point I found that you could tell people anything. You can make something up. The more crazier, the better. And people will, and then you can say later on in YouTube that I made it up, and they'll be like, no, I know you actually are channeling something, and you have the truth, and this is the truth. They will refuse to accept it. So even if you give them proof that the earth is not flat, or telling them just to take a weather balloon and with a camera they could clearly see the curvature, they will reject this. They will pretend like they never heard it because they don't want to see it.
That's right.
But in my time, back in my day, it was all about the earth was hollow. And this was the videos and the things my dad was talking to me about.
Oh, you were a hollow earther.
I was a hollow earther,
Okay.
very much so. I have all kinds of really wacky videos about the hollow earth, I think.
Wow. Yeah, my brother just pointed that out to me, that's a thing, and he was asking me about it and showing me some video about Admiral Byrd, and I was just like, dude, you got to stop right now. Like now. This has to stop now. Do not get into this. And I think I convinced him, but it was some work, you know. Wow.
But people think the more people believe in something, the more that it's true. If a flat Earth video has many millions of hits, then it must be true.
Right.
And it's not necessarily lots of people believe a lot of stupid stuff. It doesn't mean it's true.
Nope.
And even if some things are true, should we make it such an authority within us that to the point that we are too afraid to question outside of it, that we identify with it, we personalize it, and so to think outside of it is very, very difficult, or we feel that people who don't think or agree with this is the enemy. So we have to be careful with this too.
Yep. That's exactly. It's a pattern. You can almost predict it. I mean, you can lay it all out as to how the beliefs, start with a seed, grow, germinate, right, spread, and the behavior that's going to follow, the extremist behavior that follows from that. It's almost like clockwork for some people.
Even in beautiful, positive beliefs, like spirituality, I like to call it spiritual New Age, because a lot of people have a different idea what spirituality is and a different idea what New Age is. But again, like I said, they're a gateway and they intertwine very easily. Yeah. So like I said, yoga, meditation can be considered spiritual, but then activate your DNA or your pineal gland, then it's like channel your alien guides and all this stuff, which is what I was all about. I was all about this because I thought that if all we have to do is believe it and then it becomes a reality, then it makes life so much more exciting, right?
Right. Well, plus you have a hidden
out there, the better.
You have a hidden knowledge, which gives you a status. You get a status from that. I'm curious. I gotta ask. I mean, in all this time that you're doing this, I mean, you reluctantly put up a PayPal button. Okay, yeah, but you did, and you have money coming in, and you have all this support, and you're getting a ton of, peer. I guess what you would consider in the spiritual world peer review. Because you're getting, all this positive reinforcement of what you're putting out, right? So it's and this is actually, I'm really glad that we're talking about this, because I have talked extensively about the what happens at the follower end, right? And how we need to be better people, and we need to be smarter people and more critical thinkers, so that we don't fall for what some spiritual guru who doesn't really know what they're talking about is feeding us. And yet, a two-sided relationship. I don't want to use the word codependent because it's a loaded word, but it is a kind of codependent relationship because the leader needs the followers.
That's correct. The leader is nothing without the followers. They're not.
Right.
They can't be a leader then. And so it is definitely. I have to agree with you that it is codependent.
Yeah.
I felt at some point I became. I was a slave to my followers because I had to tell them what they wanted to hear, how they wanted to hear it. This is what they were expecting of me.
Right.
I had to constantly make videos. If I didn't, what's wrong? Why don't you make videos? I can't function without your videos.
Yep.
Yeah, so suddenly it was like this, and I'm like, okay, well, this is my mission, so I have to try to give more and more to them, and at the same time, it's never enough.
Right.
But what else do you have? What else do you have? So this is why we have this idea of levels, and you have to even more advance. It feels like a reality show. So you think you're spiritual, so you think you're conscious. So whoever has the most...
Right. That's exactly right. And that's so funny, because in Scientology, which is the one I'm most familiar with. I mean, I've familiarized myself with some other things too, but there are levels. And that took Hubbard 15 years to develop, all through Go ahead.
It's very convenient. It's very clever because it's never ending. It's a great way to keep people trapped because again, never good enough. So same for Christianity, never good enough for God. I need to do more service for God. I need to spread the gospel more. What else can I do? Oh crap, God heard me thinking about something that could be an unpure thought. So it's a perfect mind trap. And the thing that I'm sure L. Ron did was pretended that he had it all together, that he reached these levels. And so the more you talk about these kind of things and the more you learn about the levels, the more people see you in a certain way. So they assume also that you have it all together as well. And of course, when you make videos, you're not showing them crying, or when you're struggling, you're showing them in your best light, trying to be positive. So people again think, yeah, exactly, that bliss zombie is what I call it, which I don't think is worth it either, to have like a lobotomy where thinking is suddenly not cool, and you're just like in bliss 24/7, where so many people have these amazing experiences, high emotional experiences, what I call them, and they're lost to this. They want to recreate this experience in any way possible, so they'll pay whatever expensive workshop or healer or practitioner to kind of get there again. But we're not meant to live there 24/7.
Right. It's like a dopamine rush.
It is.
Yeah, and they want
it.
It becomes they need their fix.
It is, but it's also an act. So the spiritual leaders always, if they're not acting like they're together, then the followers have convinced themselves that they are together. So they'll only see them this way. And I had this this realization in my trailer. Where I was in Spain, and I at the end of my speech, I don't know, I had a Twilight Zone moment where I was just suddenly freaked out by how they were looking at me like I'm an angel, I'm divine, and I'm actually quite a tomboy. I have 3 brothers, and so I don't know, I have my own logic in which I thought, this is creepy, what should I do? I know, I just did this big epic burp. It's in my documentary trailer.
Oh yeah, that's right. I saw that. You have an animated version of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that really
have it on video.
That really happened.
It said it was a true story. Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't get that.
Because I started to feel uncomfortable. I started to realize something was off, that these people were not seeing me for what I actually was, and it started to feel like the life of Brian Monty Python,
Right.
Tell us more. No, you're an individual. You can think for your own. Yes, what else can you tell us? And no. So it started to feel like this. And so after I did this burp, I thought, okay, this might snap them out of the spell. Yeah, okay. That's how I think. And anyway, they were just like, I think after that, I was coy, because I did this for about, this burp was like 3 seconds long, very epic, arms out and everything, and I just point to my translator and I say it's him, because I know it's ridiculous. They all saw me, do it, and so my translator's like, no, it was you, Jessica. And just when I was about to say, well, of course, the audience starts freaking out and going, how dare you accuse Jessica Mystic of such a thing? It was you pig, to the translator. It was very, very shocking, because they saw me do it, but they refused to see I did it. And this made me become aware, like, what leaders they can get away with anything. There's a documentary about Sai Baba, an Indian guru who supposedly could do all these miracles, make gold appear out of thin air, or gold eggs that come out of his mouth. Obviously, he'd drink water first with a cup that you can't see that's in the mouth, and ooh, here it is, wow. But it was really disturbing because they have an interview with one of the lead devotees, and he's the owner of the Hard Rock Cafes. And
Wow.
they talk about how Sai Baba was caught with molesting young boys, and that he even might be behind some of the murders of them. And
Wow.
when they confronted this owner of the Hard Rock Cafe, his main devotee, about this, he said, "Well, it doesn't matter what he's done. He's still my leader. He's still my guru. He's still my God." So people get to this point of power where it doesn't matter what you do, you're so advanced, and this became very scary, that people can be this way, that they can see me no longer as a human, that I'm above everything, and then there's no responsibility.
Right.
That's quite disturbing, that we give a person this much power. We really shouldn't do this, because of course it will lead to corruption. I can see why so many people can get tempted to further exploit. I saw the other leaders exploiting their followers, using them for sexual things, using them for financial, just consensus. And I was very disturbed by this, because some of the leaders knew that this was something they can they can make people believe whatever they want.
Right.
They know, they think it's bullcrap, and they convince, but they know that people will believe them.
And
So they just milk it for all first.
that's kind of the standard idea of a spiritual leader for skeptics, is that people get into that racket so that they can get all those rewards, knowing the whole time that it's all nonsense. But it's
a big business. It's $1 billion business.
Yeah, it's a big business. And
Sylvia Brown.
And I'll tell you, it's, to be just a little frustrated for a moment, it is frustrating to be at the end that we're on right now, where you're trying to talk sense to people, because they don't necessarily sound like they really want to hear it. It's nowhere near as popular.
So those are the ones that are, again, so there's two kinds as I see it. There's the ones that know it's a scam and milk it for all it's worth.
Yep.
And then there's ones like me who really believe that this is true. They convince themselves, and so they're able to convince others.
Yep.
So they're very sincere in this. They don't know they're lying. They forgot they were lying to themselves, or that they've convinced themselves in order to cope, to function. And so this is also difficult for them to hear, because when I tell them this, they're like, well, no, but there is still real spirituality, and we still have to wake people up. So we continue on, and I did too. The burp afterwards, even though I was disturbed by this, it didn't make me leave. It just was this hiccup, this moment of doubt.
Right.
But it wasn't enough to really question it fully. Okay, there's some things that aren't good in spirituality or New Age movement, but not everything. There's a lot of good things too, so I should focus there. So you continue into it. So the next thing that happened was I ended up becoming quite drained, because I was giving so much, and I had no time for myself. And because I had this idea now, I had to save the world, and I could do it, and I have to make my dad proud on the other side. And
Sure.
Then I ended up getting into an abusive relationship, and mostly psychologically abusive, very manipulative. You used me to sell things to my followers, and this kind of thing. And also, the more this sort of manipulation and abuse happened, the more I would sort of, my beliefs would say, well, my soul chose this, so I just have to be more loving, because love is always the answer to everything, even the Illuminati and the reptilian people. You just have to send them love. It makes sense, right? So logical.
Sure.
Of course, what it does is it allows them to get away with it, forgive, continue on, and so this just amplifies, and it's worse. It becomes worse and worse, and so that's what happened. And I was really wondering, did I really choose this? I have a hard time believing that my soul could choose something like this. It's again, I wasn't able to fully question it, but I was wondering, why weren't my beliefs able to help me? My beliefs were supposed to be the answer, the solution to everything. Later on, I would to find out that if our beliefs are the problem, then no way could they ever be the solution. So for religious, Christian, for example, if the problem is that they feel they're not good enough for God, no matter what they do to be good for God, again, like they're still stuck, that it makes the problem worse, whatever try to goodness they continue to do for God. And so I just felt like I had to get away. I had to try to understand why I got into this kind of a relationship. I also started to see that my followers were becoming more and more mentally unstable. I was getting stalkers. I was getting people becoming like very paranoid. The 2012 was coming, and a lot of people thought it was the end of the world.
Okay.
And I didn't necessarily think it'd be the end of the world, but I did think there would be some big shift, some big change of some kind. I would always say I was careful with dates, because some people are like, yes, something's for sure is going to happen at this date, and of course nothing happens. But if you were to look at the Facebook at the end of 2011, you could see that people were really just acting like, wow, something's really happening. I feel the energy. I feel the shift. So they were trying to convince themselves.
Right.
I just said it was an end of an old way of living, being, thinking, and doing, that we'd somehow end up in another dimension or something like this, the fifth dimension.
Sure, the fifth. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's vague enough that it could mean literally anything.
Yeah, exactly, right?
Now, did you know at this point that you were sputtering vague generalities on purpose so as not to get locked into something, or was this just kind of going with the flow and it just kind of seemed like the right thing to do? Was there calculation to that, or was there, I'm just going with the flow here?
Well, I think it'd be I'm going with the flow, because I was very careful to get locked in generalities and dates and things like this. I mean, even though I said, okay, we could maybe go to a fifth dimension, we just don't know. We don't know what will happen.
Okay.
But there's so much stuff out there that this is going to happen and that's going to happen, that it makes you nervous, right? Like, what if something actually does happen and I'm not prepared? So it was, but I'm mostly a go with the flow. We'll wait and we'll see.
Okay. And at this point, you're still in the mindset that what you're saying is mostly true?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So you're still a believer in this whole thing. So what happens that you go, hey, wait a second, I'm sputtering bullshit here. This isn't the real deal. How did that change happen?
When I wanted to end the relationship with my ex, I just decided that I was going to get as far away from him as possible. I got a plane ticket, and I decided to go to Asia and Australia. He was in Canada, so I'm like, as far away from him as possible.
That's a distance, yeah.
Yeah. And I thought I could meet up with other like minds out there, and I could try to set up spiritual workshops, because it was right before the 2012.
Okay. And
so I went to all these different places in Asia, and I tried to make these kind of videos about spiritual tourists kind of a thing, or conscious tourists. And then when I went to Bali, Indonesia, to set up a workshop, I ended up doing couch surfing, and I met a guy named Diego Fontanive, who is the founder of the EOF project. But at the time, the EOF project was very small.
What's the EOF project?
EOF project, not EOF.
What is this? What is this project?
Well, it's pretty much about. Well, EOF stands for end of fear, but not the fear of irrational fear. Like if a tiger is coming for you, you run. Obviously, it's the existential fear that we have that creates a trap for us.
Okay.
So, for example, Scientology exists because of a lot of irrational fears.
Yes.
And we're not able to tell the difference between rational and irrational.
Yes.
So all beliefs need irrational fear in order to exist.
Okay.
And also this idea of irrational responsibility. I have to save the world. I have to spread my belief. It's really a battle of truth, a battle of beliefs. Every belief wants the whole world to believe what they believe in order for the shift or the greater good to happen, it seems. And if anybody who isn't believing what you believe is obviously the enemy or against you or doesn't get you or someone you have to try to convert.
Okay.
Indoctrinate in whatever way. So the project really helps us realize the difference between these two fears.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, and it combines critical thinking with metacognition, which is thinking about our thinking, and memetics.
Okay.
So virus thinking and antivirus, what we can do, because why is it that we go from Scientologists, I find they go from one belief to another. Right? Sometimes from a Scientologist, I might go to being a Christian.
Yeah, no, that happens.
But it's very difficult when you've been into something for such a long time, and you're raised in it, who are you without that belief, right? So a lot of them, I've heard also sadly, ended up turning to drugs.
I've seen
or
that.
just on medication because it's difficult to face the world and themselves, or to just admit that we've been wrong or fooled. It's quite painful.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, it's been shown that if a person's belief is being questioned, the parts of the brain that light up are the part of the same parts as if they're in physical danger.
Right. I've seen that.
So this is why when you try to talk to people about their beliefs or get them to question it, they become so defensive right away and immediately start to attack you because they feel like their life's in danger.
That's right.
Because I find that beliefs, they act like a virus. They end up taking over our mind and thinking for us rather than our own mind.
And maybe
we weren't born with that.
That's right. Maybe another way of describing that would be that they become so closely aligned in our minds with who we are, what our identity is, how we identify and think of ourselves, that the belief becomes inseparable from how we see ourselves. That's how I've gone about describing it. Right. I like the virus analogy.
It's a little bit science fiction.
Yeah, because it kind of gives separate from me, but I can see how that works sort of thing. But yeah, it's because then it becomes irrational, because if somebody's trying to have a conversation with you about the belief, it becomes about you. And you're being attacked rather than the belief is being attacked, because you cannot differentiate these two things. And this is a problem I've been trying to figure out myself with my limited amount of education, trying to learn about this problem and the causes of it, because it is a huge, huge intrinsic flaw in our cognitive process that we do this.
That's right. And we do it even in the skeptic movement as well, or atheists.
Yeah.
Like, I won't listen to something unless it has absolutely... So if you say that we're all conditioned, or then I won't listen to this because there's no scientific proof. I'm sorry, there's some things that don't need scientific proof. It's just obvious, but we can be so rigid and militant about these things, and it's not healthy at all, because it closes us off. And we all have blind spots. We all have biases, and I don't understand why we're not all fascinated with them. I would like to know what they are. And so this is
right. You talk about this, and people are like, yeah, whatever. Okay, Trump, go Trump. You're just like, come on.
Yeah, not even that though. Like, we feel like we have no choice. It has to be Trump or Hillary. Then, how did you end up bringing yourselves down to only those two choices?
Exactly.
Exactly. And why do you think you have to have either? Like, you can refuse. No, we have to go. That's just how it is. And it was the same with what really baffled me with Brexit. Yeah. People didn't really look up how this would affect them until after.
That's right.
Until after it went through. They wanted to know how it affected them.
That's right.
This is very concerning, that we tend to make a mess of things in our life. We make the same mistakes over and over again, same pothole over and over again. And then we need some sort of help or support or counseling to cope. And then we go and do the same thing again.
Yep. Exactly.
So we need to really have some sort of prevention, some kind of understanding of what we're doing. And this is something that the UF Project does as well, and it helps us to differentiate between our beliefs and also all the other conditioning or ideals that think for us again.
All right, I get it.
And to see the difference and to not get so caught up in it, because aside from religious beliefs, then there's also our ideas of relationships, our ideas of our partner. You know, how can we have a relationship with a person if we have an idea of the person? We're not actually knowing the actual person, just our idea, our picture, what we want them to be,
right?
How we think a relationship should be. This creates a lot of problems as well.
Right. I could not agree with you more on everything you just said there. Was it your exposure to the EOF project that got you thinking differently from what you were doing as a spiritual leader? Was that the tipping point for you?
Well, yeah. When I met Diego, I was just doing couch surfing, like I said, and I thought he was actually.
And what is? Did you say couch surfing?
Couch surfing.
Oh,
You've not heard of
couch. Tell me what you mean by that.
It's just a website where people who travel can stay at other people's houses for free on their couch.
Oh yeah, no, I've never heard of that. Okay, now I get it.
What? It's great. Rather than staying at hotels or motels when you're traveling, you can stay at other people. You can look up their profile and that person's cool. We have that. They're also a skeptic, and I'm going to be in that area, and can I stay on your couch for a few days? It's really wonderful.
Okay.
So anyway, I thought Diego was actually spiritual. I looked on his profile and I saw that he actually, his Facebook profile, because from his name, he used his full name, so I could see on Facebook that he had. First of all, he had something that looked like David Icke stuff, so I'm like, cool, he knows about the reptilian. And he had a video, the one that Project Camelot, which is what I did, it ended up making me pretty much famous overnight. And so it was like, okay, so he knows me, he knows about my work. So one of the things that we do also when we're believers is we try to continue to surround ourselves by people who think the same, right?
Right, want that reinforcement.
And that's right, confirmation bias. Yep. And so anyway, he actually wasn't into these kind of things at all. He actually didn't really know much about them. But he was quite fascinated with some of the things I was talking about, and he just let me talk. And then he just started to ask these questions that were like, are you sure you're helping? And then I had to think about the people that were, Bali, Indonesia, for example, is a very spiritual place. For a lot of people go there, thanks to the movie Eat, Pray, Love. There's a lot of women that dress up like Julia Roberts, get a bike, in hopes to get run over by the man of their dreams in their rice field.
Right.
They're Philippi. They really try to be just like her in hopes that they'll recreate the movie somehow. It's absolutely fascinating. But there's all sorts of bizarre workshops there as well. And actually, there found out that a lot of people that did these spiritual workshops ended up in mental institutions.
Wow.
So for me, I really thought I was helping, and that was really important to me to know that I was helping and a good person. That's one of my archetypes. And so the fact that maybe I was promoting gullibility and allowing people to continue to be trapped, because if you give advice by, just send love if you're struggling with your partner, or if they're abusive, or this situation, it's again, easy, quick fix answers that really don't fix things. Like drugs, you feel good temporarily, and then afterwards you feel horrible, and you're in an even bigger mess.
Right.
So these kind of questions he was asking me, is that you thinking, or is this your beliefs thinking for you, or
Interesting.
So there's many questions he would ask me. The description is not the described. He would always say, you know what I mean by that, right?
No,
so
how
a person describes something when they experience something doesn't mean it actually is that way.
Oh, so of course.
So, so when a person, for example, has a spiritual experience, or what they think is a spiritual experience, they whatever they experience, they try to describe it to a person.
Yes.
And then a person thinks, okay, so then they immediately make it as true, and that's actually what happened, and then they try to convince themselves they've had a similar experience as well.
That's right.
Because they want it so bad, because that's what it means to be spiritual.
That's right.
And then the ones that can't do it get really frustrated that they're not able to successfully delude themselves.
Exactly.
Easier than others.
The way I've talked about that is that you can have a subjective experience and you can interpret it 20 different ways, and any one of those 20 different ways might be the right one, or they might all be a total fantasy, but you can convince yourself that any one of those interpretations of your subjective experience has to be the answer for what happened to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or this idea of enlightenment, like, because I was into this idea of enlightenment, and Diego is like, but the only person that we know of who was enlightened is the Buddha. But any documentations that was written about him was hundreds of years after he died,
Right.
so nobody really knew him. Therefore, it could be the Harry Potter of that time. It could be completely invented, and nobody can say otherwise. And he's like, is there anybody alive today that is enlightened? Or are they just following an idea? Or, I mean, these people who claim to be enlightened, they are a mess in one way or another. They're biased, they're playing a role again, trying to look like be what they think is enlightened, but really they're struggling with their mind, or
Right.
monks who are enslaved by ritual and routine, and they're not able to live life. They're hiding in their routines and doing the same thing over and over again. They're not able to think critically. They're not able to question what they're doing.
Right.
They're not able to see that there's a lot of violence in their belief as well, and that they don't. So all these kind of, he just kept asking these questions, like I said, and after.
I love the fact that this is how this
years.
happened. I really love that this is how this happened, is that you run across somebody who used Socratic method on you.
Pretty much, yes. And then I thought that actually he was trying to tell me about fake spirituality and try to warn me of this, and that he was actually trying to help me understand real spirituality, because he had this kind of mystical aspect to him. So I started to think like, oh wow, maybe he's an advanced being from another. So embarrassing to go with the pattern again. Come on.
Of course you did.
I wish time travel was real, so I could travel back in time and shake myself and be like, "Come on, what the hell?"
Right.
Jess. Anyway, he did this actually purposely because he didn't really know much about spirituality, like I said, or New Age. But the more he understood that this was my language, if you want to get through to somebody, you have to use language, right?
Yep.
Learn the language, hopes to get them to realize how they scam themselves, how they convince themselves, how manipulate ourselves into believing things are true. And so that was very savvy on his part. So I decided to stay longer with him and work with myself on this, because I was also concerned about, having a relationship, but again, the way like I had with that ex. And I really didn't want to have because you hear about women who have abusive relationships, they go, again, like I said, the same thing over and over.
Right.
So I just wanted to look at these patterns. I wanted to understand if I was spreading things that weren't helping my followers, and I have a responsibility to tell them about this. So I started to make videos with Diego, and I thought my followers would understand and see what I saw very easily. No. Nope. They ended up turning on me. I was suddenly I was a traitor. I was a liar.
I am shocked. I can't believe it.
I was brainwashed. Diego is evil. He's also with the Illuminati. He's taking me away from my mission. And also, like, my father's disappointed in me now, people are saying, all these kind of things. You know very well, because this is what happens when you question. But I was just, like, concerned. I was really worried for my followers. I didn't want them to, fall into the same traps I fell in again, right? It was very sad, because they were my family, they were my friends, and suddenly they're not again. And like what happened when I told you the church or the cult I was involved in.
Right.
And
they'll even shun the leader.
Sorry?
They'll even shun
the
leader. That is such a lesson to be learned. That is so fascinating.
Well, if you don't, again, if they really rely on you telling them what they want to hear, and if you don't tell them that, then, or if you tell them just to question or to think, questioning and thinking is such a taboo thing, particularly in the spiritual movement, because it's all about feeling. Feeling is more important than thinking. The heart is more superior, but the heart can lead you into a total mess as well. It's not that reliable. Our feelings are not reliable. Our memories are not reliable. They can be invented, distorted. So, but people want to cling to this. They want to continue to make this the authority for the decisions that they make, and it's really not healthy.
Right.
But we're so sure what we've experienced is true, and so.
Interesting.
So really, thinking to a lot of people is considered evil and uncomfortable. We've been taught our whole life that whenever we think or question, we're punished. Mm-hmm. We lose our friends. You know, in work, we deal with bosses that have the Dunning-Kruger effect. I don't know if you know what this means, but
definitely talked about that.
The confident idiot. You know, we're dealing with these bosses who we know are about to make a bad decision, and we try to tell them about that. Who are you to tell me this? I am the boss. I have the education. You know, and okay, you sit and watch them. You know, make the mess. Right. And yeah,
you go ahead. You show me the master race here.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And so with the spiritual New Age and conspiracy people, it's like you were saying before, they think they are knowledgeable. They think they have some special truth.
Right.
So they have this Dunning-Kruger effect as well. They become very confident in what they think they know.
Right.
Again, the description is not the described. They become confident in what they think they know, and they also become afraid to make fun of it.
Right.
Or to laugh at themselves for this as well.
That's right. It's very serious. It's very serious.
Yeah, it is, and it shouldn't be. And this should be a red flag. A red flag for anything is if you can't question it. Yep. But we have this in education too. We get in trouble if we question the teacher and what, you know, when they're trying to teach us something that we know is bias or just regurgitation. And so I have a lot of people who've been got in trouble in school for things like this. And this isn't right. We should be free to question.
Right.
We should be free to make fun of things as well. I think blasphemy was another thing that helped me to get my mind back from these beliefs, to make fun of myself, make fun of what I used to believe and how ridiculous it is. It's very healthy. Blasphemy has proven to be an effective therapy.
Because it brings it down. It brings it down, you know, and it makes it more manageable. And if you can laugh at something, or ridicule something, then it is not the serious, solemn, you know, life-changing thing that you had it on a pedestal as. And it's just I don't know, it's a funny bit of our psychology that it works that way.
Yeah, and we need it.
Oh, we do. We definitely do. We are running out of time, and I've still got 10,000 questions for you. So we're going to have to do this again.
Absolutely. Love to. A pleasure.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just want to wrap up one thing though, because I definitely want to get you to finish your arc here on how, you know, you met Diego, you start questioning, you start looking at this differently, you start introducing this to your followers, and they are now challenging you and disconnecting from you. Was that the end, or was that the beginning of the end for you as a spiritual guru, or what? How did this how did this roll out?
That was the beginning of the end. Okay. Absolutely. I started to then go after other spiritual leaders like Teal Swan, for example, and particularly because she was, you know, promoting suicide as something as conscious or okay, because they believe in karma, reincarnation, and it's fine to hit the reset button when things are very different. Yeah, and then she would do conferences, and she would laugh about it and make jokes about it. And she would claim to be in abusive cults, satanic cults, and that her job was to lure children to be killed. And while she's talking about this in her interview, she would be like flirting with the interviewer and playing with her hair and laughing while she's talking about kids being burned alive that she witnessed.
Wow.
So she was obviously just using this story to get attention and to make people feel sorry for her and not bother questioning her. And so when I started to expose her, her followers really turned on me as well. But I felt again that I just didn't want to give up with trying to get them to be able to see or understand. And slowly people started to realize, or they had some kind of trauma or bad experience with their gurus or followers, not followers, but just like other people that were in these beliefs as well, so they we started to offer some kind of some coaching, let's say, that would help people transition from a believer to a skeptic. Because, if you can leave a church, but you can't, to leave it psychologically is a whole other thing, because it's still there. I mean, I don't consider myself religious, but damn, I still have so many religious patterns. Like, I still have this idea that a man must come first in a relationship. I have to sacrifice myself for the people I care about. This is all religious.
Right.
And so even skeptics, atheists, we are still saturated by our entertainment, education has still religious thinking. Yeah. And as long as we're not attentive to this, then we will continue to have problems.
Right. It does saturate our cultures around the world. It really does. The influence of religion cannot be easily demarcated or described, because it is so pervasive, and there's so many biases set up, even for non-religious people or people who come out of religion. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Okay, well, we're going to wrap up here. But like I said, I think we're definitely going to be talking again soon if we can make it happen, because I think there's going to be some very interesting commentary on this podcast as far as people's feedback on this. And I'm very curious what else people out there want to know from you and from your experience, so that we can, do more of this. I have one last question, just to, we've talked about the leaders and the followers and the dynamics of that relationship. And then when you started, speaking out yourself, you got treated a lot like a follower who questions. You get ostracized and shunned and ridiculed. Mm-hmm. Have you successfully reached people, though? Has everybody shunned you, or did your words matter? Did you wake some people up? Have you heard from those people?
Actually, yes. And the thing about this is it takes time to be able to see what I was saying. It's not something that happens overnight, like I naively thought.
Right.
Ended up, people started to realize it slowly and contact me and want to work with us. And more people now are starting to see it, and now we're branching into the skeptic and atheist area as well, which is how we found each other, and in critical thinking as well, and just to also add complementary to critical thinking. Sorry, I'm a little bit dyslexic sometimes, I say. Trying to complement critical thinking, because it's great, but there's a lot of areas that are still, like you were saying, that there's big biases here and there, and so even people who study critical thinking are still stuck in those biases. Right. And so so we're now working on helping to improve that as well.
Right. Well, where do people find you if they're curious about your journey, your videos, your work? Where I'll put the link here in the show notes here, but where is that?
Okay, so there's my website, jessicaschab.com. There's the eofproject.org, and there's my Facebook page as well. And yeah, you should be able to find everything from there.
Perfect. Okay, good. Okay. Well, I'm gonna recommend people check you out for all the reasons we have talked about in this show. You definitely have come through an interesting journey, from a different angle, and yet I hope people can see all the parallels to all the other people that I've interviewed who have experienced life in a destructive cult atmosphere, woken up, had to suffer through the consequences of that waking up, and are now leading a life that is more intellectually and emotionally honest, but is kind of harder in a lot of ways.
Oh, yes, it is. It's like being sober for the first time in a long time. And like... Right. Seeing dealing with the wake of the storm, the damage, and trying to repair it the best you can, and not letting yourself fall for these things, because it's so easy to go back to these patterns, these mindsets, and staying attentive to it.
Yep, exactly. All right, Jessica. Well, thank you very much for giving me this bit of your life here, this bit of your time.
Very welcome. Pleasure.
Absolutely. Okay, folks, leave any questions or comments or feedback, good, bad, or sideways, in the comment section below or at sensiblyspeaking.com. I definitely want to hear from you on this one. I am overwhelmed with curiosity as to what you guys are going to have to say about this. All right, and I think this is probably going to be our New Year's weekend episode. So we'll be bringing in the new year here, because this will be posting a week from now when we're recording this thing. So, all right, folks, I will talk to you guys again soon, and have a great new year. And thank you again, Jessica.
You're very welcome.
All right, bye-bye.